you like spending time in nature? One of the best things about being in nature is making observations. Today, I'm at Hallberg Butterfly Gardens in Sonoma County, California, and I'm going to show you how making nature observations in your nature journal can help you enjoy nature even more. Tip number one for noticing more and observing more in nature is to have a focus. Nature is very distracting and there's a lot going on. It can be overwhelming if you just go out into nature to observe things. So today, since I'm at Hallberg Butterfly Gardens, I'm going to be looking particularly at invertebrates, so insects and other arthropods. And I already see a couple. Use binoculars. Binoculars will help you see a lot more and notice more things in nature. These particular binoculars are good for close-up, so I actually use them when observing my flower and observing insects. They're still good for looking at birds and looking at things far away. Using binoculars will help you observe a lot more. Try staying in one spot for a little while. By sitting down in one spot, you're gonna see a lot more things in nature because you're not moving so much and things won't be afraid of you. This is especially true for birds and mammals, but also applies to insects. So find a spot and sit there for a while. This is why nature journaling is so useful, because you usually have to sit down for a little bit to draw. And if you focus on a plant or a tree or a landscape, you'll be surprised about how many animals will come close to you. That is a great way to observe more in nature. Looking at nature is different than seeing nature or making a nature observation. So another huge tip for better nature observations is to draw a diagram. You don't need to draw a pretty portrait, but by at least looking at something carefully enough to try to draw a diagram of it, you'll observe much more than you would normally. I've been looking at a flower and I am noticing a lot more by drawing this diagram of it than I noticed when I first just walked by it. Whether you are using binoculars or not, try zooming in and out. So looking at things at different scales. We oftentimes will always draw things at the same scale over and over again. You can see here, this is the scale I normally would draw a flower at. You can see the leaves, and it's useful at this scale for certain things. But I also did these two blow-up boxes where I zoomed in on the individual flower parts. So when you're out in nature, make sure you're zooming in and out. Even if you're not using binoculars or making a drawing, think about looking at things close up and then backing up and looking at things far away. Some of us always look at things close up, or we have a certain place that we often focus. So try looking at things closer if you're always looking at the big picture. And if you're always looking at the minutia and the lichen and the insects, zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger context. I know I said to stay in one place to make better nature observations, because sitting in one place, you'll often see more or have more close encounters with animals. But it's important to move every once in a while. So this is where self-awareness comes in, because you might actually just be sitting in a single place because it's comfortable, and you might not actually be getting any good nature observations there. So every once in a while, mix it up and move along. So I wasn't seeing too many invertebrates in my last spot, so I'm moving to a slightly more sunny spot where I'm hoping to do some observations on these cool carpenter bees and other bees. Don't let what you think you know about nature or concepts, ideas, and names get in the way of actual observation in nature. We all have concepts, ideas, names, and categories about the natural world. An example would be pollinators. Many of us think that that's a category that makes total sense, and when we see insects or other organisms visiting flowers, we often assume, oh, that's a pollinator. It's important to realize that nature is more complicated. One nature observation I made only recently, I think this was like last year or 2 years ago, is that carpenter bees visiting salvia flowers like this are often not pollinating them.
Say what?
The corolla, the red part, fell out of this one, but this calyx, the remaining part at the base of the flower, has these small holes in it. And if you look carefully, you can see that these carpenter bees are actually bypassing all of the pollination services and just going straight for the nectar. So that's called nectar robbing. And when I cast the shadow on it there, see those sort of pale slits in the top? Those are the holes that the carpenter bees make to get to the pollen. So when you're out in nature, try to pay attention to what's actually happening and notice things, ask questions, and don't always take for granted the categories and the names and the things that you think you know. Having a focus is important, and I'm focused on looking for bees and pollinators, and I came over to this salvia, but I'm noticing all of this white stuff on the leaves, and if I were too focused, I wouldn't pay attention to it. But this white stuff is actually very interesting. This is all bird poop, and this has implications besides just being a cool nature observation, because if I'm going to nature journal or sit and observe pollinators coming to these salvia flowers, I might want to know that this is a popular spot for birds pooping. And when you find stuff like this, always look up. See those branches right there? That is a popular spot for birds to sit, and parking myself right underneath there might not be the best idea. However, this would be a good spot maybe tonight to look for owls, because this looks kind of like raptor poop to me. So I'm guessing either owls or hawks of some sort perch up there. So don't get too focused that you miss cool other observations. Make your observations better with numbers. I just noticed myself writing lots of these bees on flowers, and I realized right after I wrote that I had seen 3 of the bees. And so if someone were reading this and they read lots of these bees on these flowers, how many do you think they would think of? So I should probably be a little bit more specific and use some numbers to describe what I noticed instead of just saying lots. Words like lots or many can be a little bit confusing, so try to be specific in your observations. Come for the flowers, stay for the ambush predators. If you go deeper with anything in nature, you're gonna start observing other stuff. At first, I wasn't that impressed by these particular flowers. They didn't call to me, but I did notice there was a lot of pollinators coming to them, so I decided to stay here with them for a little bit and start sketching them. And la-di-da-di-da-di-da. And if you do this with anything in nature, you'll start noticing other stuff that you are really interested in. Oh, yeah. Now we're talking. So for example, while I was watching these flowers, I noticed this little spider here underneath the flower waiting in ambush for pollinators. Look, even Apis mellifera come to this flower. So is it pollen or nectar that they're getting here? Oh yeah, look at that. Oh my god. I love bees. I wonder why it's going around in circles and it's way on these edges, not in the middle of the flower. Oh, what a beautiful living jewel. Talking to yourself out loud is socially acceptable in the nature journaling community. And there is science that tells us that when we say things out loud, we notice more deeply. So I'm going to model that right now. I noticed that this creature has a yellow and black or yellow and dark brown pattern on its abdomen. I noticed that the eyes connect to each other in the middle. I noticed two little things sticking out the front of what I think is the face. I noticed that the wings sweep out away from the body and stay pretty far away from the body. I noticed that the overall shape is very continuous and curving in outline. I noticed that there's a big dark spot on what I think is the thorax near the head. I noticed the legs don't show up that much at this angle. I'm noticing that the stripes get thicker, regularly thicker towards the back. Noticing that the back, that abdomen, kind of it does taper, but it stays sort of thick for a good distance. I'm noticing that the eyes don't seem to touch in the middle. They seem to be separated by a bit of the head. I'm noticing the wings are overlapping. I'm noticing this fuzziness on the whole back there is actually a pale color. That head shape, and look at the antennae, I'm noticing are quite a bit longer. The leg arrangement seems different as well and quite a bit bulkier. When you observe two separate things at the same time, you notice more about them than if you studied them independently. This is called joint comparison. Look very close and carefully. My friend and the curator at the Hallberg Butterfly Gardens showed me these braconid wasp cocoons and an anise swallowtail caterpillar that has been brainwashed by the parasitoid wasps. You can see the caterpillar is moving a little bit there, right there, and you can see what look like eggs on it as well. So to observe more in nature, you have to look really closely to notice things like this. These things are small, as you can see next to my finger. So pay attention and you'll make more cool nature observations. A lot of the best nature observations start with, that's funny, and then a person looking closer. Are you inspired to go make some nature observations of your own? Did you get anything new from these 12 tips? If so, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you can't wait all the way until next week for the next episode of the show, check out these two videos here.